Tottenham are back. You're excited, aren't you? I can tell you're excited. I can see by the look on your face you have been dying for Spurs to return after the international break, right? Maybe wrong. Welcome back to the Bowman YouTube channel. I hope you guys are doing well. Please subscribe if you are new. Please like the video. We are going to be previewing the Man City game at the Etihad tomorrow. It's a ground that has been quite favourable for Tottenham since Pep Guardiola has gone there. I think Spurs have taken more points against Manchester City than any other side during Pep Guardiola's reign. So that would be enough to fill some Spurs fans with a little bit of confidence going to the Etihad tomorrow. But the feeling around the club isn't great. We've had a bit of a break from YouTube. I haven't made any content on here since the Ipswich game, and I think that's all kind of sat with us for this international break, right? And obviously City coming into this, 4 defeats in a row in all competitions, and you would feel that there is a vulnerability about City, which there definitely is, and we're going to get into that in this video. We're going to talk about how we can hurt them, what we need to watch out for. We're going to talk about Tottenham's injuries, of course, and how we might line up. You can see my lineup on the screen there. We haven't really got any other choice, to be honest. Romero confirmed out, Van der Ven out. Obviously, Bentancur suspended. So this is the lineup that I think Spurs will go with, and we'll get into that in a little bit more detail. But like I said, that Ipswich kind of result has lingered, for 2 weeks now, and this would be a real opportunity to go and get something at the Etihad and kind of just get our season just back on track a little bit. Because we've been up and down, we've been inconsistent, which has really hurt the fan base, I think, because we can see the bright, good shoots that are there, but we can also see the defensive failings. And I do worry about that in this game with Dragusin and Davis going to the Etihad in a game where, let's face it, City are going to be bang up for it. They've got players coming back, which we'll touch on quickly now. Ruben Diaz is out, Kovacic is out, Rodri, of course, is out, Jeremy Doku is out, Oscar Bob is out, De Bruyne is back, Akanji is back, John Stones is back for them as well. So it's going to be very interesting to see how they line up. And obviously at the back for Spurs, it will be Dragusin and Ben Davis. And obviously that is a worry for Spurs fans, right? Obviously Christian Romero's had a bit of an up and down season, but you want him in this game. Obviously, we went to the Etihad last year with Emerson and Davis as those two centre-halves, and we came away with a point in that game, right? But it could have been very ugly. We could have been 3-4-0 down potentially at half-time. We went in at half-time 2-1 down, came back into it, got back to 2-2, went 3-2 down, got back to 3-3. And it could be one of those games again tomorrow. This game always produces carnage, and City's kind of vulnerability without Rodri plays into Tottenham's hands in a lot of ways. And we've already seen how Spurs can hurt Manchester City this season. And we'll get into that now. Obviously, in this City game, what we did see was Spurs taking the lead early on from being brave, playing that from the back. City, who are going to press Tottenham very high. We've seen that with City so far this season. They've got one of the highest presses and most relentless presses in the league, as you can see here when you look at defensive height versus PPDA, low number of passes allowed, higher block defending, higher press. They're going to get at you. And we've seen that. We've already seen that against us so far this season. This was kind of a bit of a map of the goal that we scored against them, how they're going to commit bodies forward. Obviously different personnel compared to the cup game. Haaland pressing Vicario. They're going to want to do that, right? And I think this is a game where I don't think Spurs are going to have the same composure at the back to be able to play out under pressure like this, because you haven't got someone like Christian Romero who is so calm and so composed in these kind of situations. Spurs work it really nicely. Out to Archie Gray, down the line to Brennan Johnson. Let me just move myself back over here. Down the line to Brennan Johnson. Kulusevski, you can already see. This is something that we highlighted when we did the breakdown of the City Cup game, and we're going to do a City breakdown on Sunday, so make sure to subscribe for that if you are new. City's movement off of Gundogan. It's going to be Gundogan, you'd feel, in this pivot for City tomorrow, given the fact that Kovacic is out. That is an area I think Spurs can really hurt City if we are able to play out. If we are able to play out, or there is another solution to that, which I'm going to talk about soon. And again, Spurs are in. Right, lots of space behind that defence. And again, these transitional moments where we're able to find Kulusevski, who's going to have more freedom to roam because he probably will be that sole 10 tomorrow. City committing bodies, Spurs able to play it wide. Kulusevski again. Kulusevski and Solanke, I think, are going to be so key tomorrow in terms of our pressure, but also giving Spurs that ability to be a bit more direct and go longer and hurt City that way. Win duels against that pivot, which I'm going to speak about shortly. But again, here, City committing bodies forward, Spurs able to play out. Solanke, who I think is going to be massive, finding that space in behind for Werner, misses that chance. And again, Spurs winning the ball back here when City are trying to play. And again, we spoke about transitions. Kulusevski making those runs off and in behind, kind of playing as that second striker, which I think is something that we might see tomorrow. And we've seen so many times City are vulnerable on transition. This was Fulham. Fulham actually won this game at the Etihad on XG. They lost it 3-2, but they probably should have won it. Traore, that space and that pace in behind. Again, Wolves, players with good ball carriers who are good on transition will hurt Man City. Again, this is where they conceded that goal. You've got Cunha here, you've got Aït-Nouri. We kind of covered all of this in the build-up to the City Cup game, but I think it's more relevant than ever now. This was kind of the graphic, the image that I used on the thumbnail here. I won't go back to the start, but basically I think City might have a set piece. Obviously, they're going to commit a lot of bodies forward. You can see on the thumbnail how many bodies they have got committed forward. Iwobi makes the run from deep into the box. Again, Fulham should score here. I mentioned them winning the game on XG. They should have won the game. And again, Traore using his pace and the space in behind. City are vulnerable when teams come at them on transition, and we saw that. This isn't necessarily a transition goal conceded against Brighton, and again the game just turned just like that, just as it did when we played Brighton. But again, balls through the middle. Kovacic here, that they kind of set up in kind of a 4-4-1-1 with De Bruyne and Haaland up top. Baliba, one pass, little layoff, and again, runners in behind them. City are very vulnerable in these transition moments, and that is where Spurs can hurt them. Spurs can definitely hurt them. But like I said, I don't think we're going to get many opportunities to kind of carve out these kind of chances tomorrow, because you lose that composure at the back with Radu Dragusin, who, again, Galatasaray, we saw Dragusin and Davis not looking that comfortable under pressure with a team that will press high. So what is the solution to that? The solution to that is being more direct and using Dominic Solanke as that target man. I would back, look, City, again, it kind of remains to be seen how they're going to set up at the back tomorrow. I think Lewis will kind of join Gundogan in this pivot, kind of invert him from right back. I think you'll either see Stones or Akanji kind of defend these channels. They might go with Kyle Walker, but I think this is probably how they will go. I think Gvardiol will come back in. I think Lewis played at left back in that Brighton game. But this is how I kind of think they'll go. What you can do, and this is something Spurs have not done very often at all. If I go here to, there's a graphic here, again, brilliantly done by EPL Data Analytics. Great Twitter account, go and give them a follow. Premier League teams' goalkeepers' ball distribution, only goal kicks. You can see a very, very small percentage of Spurs' goal kicks are going long and in behind. I think it's like the lowest percentage in the league when you look at this. Southampton, again, 7.95. Every team is going far more long than Spurs. 71% of Spurs' goal kicks are being played out short. Whereas you look at Man City and the variety that they've got in terms of their attack, and that is something that we can look at here in terms of build-up attacks versus direct attacks. They're very high for build-up attacks, but also very high for direct attacks. And we saw this when they played Brentford. They are not scared to go in behind and go over the top. Ederson baiting the press and going in behind, and that is something that Spurs have got to watch out for tomorrow. Haaland being kind of isolated against Dragusin or Davis, rolling them and getting in behind. That is something that City will not be afraid to do, but Spurs have got to learn from that and be a bit more direct themselves. I think they're asking for trouble tomorrow if we want to kind of play out from the back like this. I think it might work in certain situations. Like, I don't think Spurs are going to get caught every single time, but with how intense and how good Man City's press is, again, De Bruyne, someone that kind of leads that press really well. Will he come back in tomorrow maybe for Mateus Nunes, and Foden switches out wide, or Grealish potentially comes in, someone you've got with that ball retention in a game that is going to be very chaotic, someone that you can rely on holding on to the ball. But obviously these two haven't played a lot of minutes, but it could end up being something like that. But here in this example, I'm just going to leave the players that were originally there already in. You're not going to get away with it trying to play out every single time. Look, if Romero and Van de Ven were in the team, the percentages would show when you're coming up against a team that are as good as pressing as Manchester City, that you're going to lose the ball on the odd occasion, right? But for the most part, I think with Romero in that team, I'd feel a lot more solid or a lot more secure in terms of Spurs playing out from the back, because again, like I said, we saw with that goal against Man City, Spurs are comfortable kind of making these little combinations, and Kulusevski's movement as that 10 off of Gundogan, who I don't think has the legs in transition. I think he's able to make these movements kind of off of him, and then Johnson can go around the outside as well. Solanke can get in behind. But what I want to focus on is Spurs being more direct into Dom Solanke. The overlap on the breakdown, Amir and Harrison did a great segment talking about this, about Vicario and how we never really see him kind of clip these balls into Solanke. This can be a real weapon for Spurs, because I think Solanke will be so good at kind of dragging Stones and Akanji. I think if they had Ruben Diaz, who I think is likely to be out tomorrow, someone who isn't scared to kind of go to the back of a striker and kind of get physical in those duels, I think Solanke's got far better chance of kind of rolling Stones and Akanji. We know Solanke's ball retention when he receives the ball back to goal is so good. And again, if Solanke is able to kind of receive more of these balls from Vicario, kind of bypassing City's press, then I think that is how Spurs can hurt City on transition. Because when you look at the ball carriers and the off-the-ball runners that Spurs have got, Sarr, Kulusevski, Johnson, Son, all brilliant at running in behind. So I think Spurs have got to be very careful when they are playing out from the back tomorrow. Again, Davis is someone that likes these kind of clip little balls down the line. Dragusin, again, his long passing range is pretty decent. I don't think Spurs should be as committed to the principles of playing out from the back as we have been in recent games. And I think it could get us into trouble tomorrow against a team that will press with that intensity that Man City will. And look, this isn't just a Man City side that press with intensity. This is a Man City side that press with intensity with a point to prove as well. 4 defeats on the bounce. They are going to be bang up for this. They need to get their season back on track. Obviously, Liverpool, I think, have got a very straightforward game in Southampton away earlier on in the day. Liverpool could extend that lead at the top. There's a lot of pressure going on City into this game. So they are going to be fighting like dogs to go and win this. And that will mean, with obviously that commitment, there will be space for Spurs to hurt them in behind. And I think a much more effective way of hurting them in behind is bypassing that City press, going long, allowing Solanke to kind of win these duels in the centre-backs, popping the balls off to the players like Sarr, and then getting the ball in behind. Because we know City are going to commit men forward. I think that's how you can hurt them. And like I said, I'm not saying play out from the back or don't play out from the back at all. And I'm not saying go long every single time. But one thing I've been calling for a lot, and I spoke about this in the Ipswich breakdown video last week, is that I need to see a bit more variety in terms of Spurs' build-up. Because I think we can be really vulnerable sometimes when we are trying to play out from the back, especially without players like Christian Romero. One thing I also wanted to speak about that is something that I think Spurs need to keep an eye on is set pieces. We know Spurs have been super vulnerable from set pieces this season and last season. Again, we've improved, of course, but we still do wince whenever we kind of concede a corner, or I certainly do still. Vicario showed a little bit of vulnerability during the international break. I think that was massively overblown, but we've seen many times this season that City have been very clever from their set-piece situations. Bernardo Silva is a player that I wanted to highlight as someone that will go and put pressure on the goalkeeper, a bit like Ben White did against Spurs in the North London derby. He'll play around. We saw with the Wolves goal, the last-minute goal that they won away at Wolves where John Stones gets that header. Bernardo Silva is in front of Jose Sarr, making it difficult. That is something that Spurs definitely need to watch out for tomorrow. I think it's going to be a really fascinating game. It's going to be a great one for the neutral, for sure. But I think Spurs are in a difficult spot at the moment. If we go to the league table, obviously Spurs currently in 10th. We've seen that inconsistency: 5 wins, 1 draw, 5 defeats. Away from home, our away form has been really poor. We've won 1 game away from home all season, 1 draw, 3 defeats. That is something that massively has to improve, obviously. But that inconsistency in general is something that needs to improve. And I think with the injuries that obviously Spurs have got, I think Ange Postecoglou is kind of going to be afforded a bit more patience from some Spurs fans that maybe are doubting him. Maybe people have just given up. I don't know. I certainly haven't. But we're coming into a period of the season which is going to be so crucial for Spurs with the fixtures that we've got coming up: City, Roma, Fulham, Bournemouth, Chelsea, Rangers, Southampton, United in the Cup, Liverpool, Forest, Wolves, all to play before the end of the year. That squad could potentially be bare bones, right? We went to the Etihad last year with a very depleted squad. If we look back at what our lineup was in that game, if I go all the way back to last year, and go to this game in particular, this was the lineup that Spurs went and got a point with at the Etihad: Basuma and Lo Celso, Porro, Royale, Davis, Udogie, Hill, Kulusevski, Johnson, Son. And again, Johnson causing problems on transition, Son causing problems on transition, Kulusevski causing problems on transition last year. City don't really like us. They put Akanji in there, kind of inverting from right back into that double pivot. I wonder if that's something they do tomorrow. I do wonder if that's something they do to beef up that midfield a little bit, bring Kyle Walker in as that third centre-back and go with something like that with Stones in the middle. I do wonder whether that's something they do, instead of using Rico Lewis, just to get a little bit more physicality, because they do struggle on transition generally, and they have struggled when they have played us. Look, let's see what happens. Let's see what happens tomorrow. Spurs can get a result. I am worried. I am worried about this game because a loss could put us, we could drop down potentially. I don't know where we could drop down to, but it's not going to look great if we lose the game. I just want to see Spurs put in a performance that we can kind of be proud of tomorrow, because obviously City are really tough. Could we go and win there and make it 5 defeats in a row for them? Of course we could. Could we go and nick a point there? Of course we could. Could we easily go there and get spanked? Yes. I think we could. I think all outcomes are possible. Generally, all outcomes are possible tomorrow, which makes it an exciting fixture, but also makes it incredibly nerve-wracking. Look, I know there's a lot of negativity in the fan base at the moment, but just try and stick behind the team. Try and stick behind the manager. We've got a really tough run of games coming up, starting with this. And I know the bad feeling is there kind of coming off the back of the Ipswich game, going into the international break, and it's horrible to just let that sit and linger. But get behind the boys. Anything's possible. We can do this tomorrow. Like I said, this is the lineup that I would go with. I think Sarr has to come in there with Kulusevski to make it a pivot with Basuma, allow Kulusevski a bit more freedom and space to kind of move into central areas. Maddison, I think, is a super sub in this game. When the game kind of opens up a little bit more, his ability to feed those passes behind City's back line, I think, could be really important. But let me know what your preferred starting 11 would be. Let me know your score prediction as well in the comments below. Make sure to like the video if you're new and subscribe to the channel. We will be back on Sunday with a breakdown of hopefully a positive Spurs result at the Etihad. We've had plenty in the past. Why can't we go and do it again, eh? Get behind the team. Up the Spurs. Nice one.